Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is iRunShibb, or Shibb for short. I appreciate you being here today. The goal of the video is to dive into Endgame and Lost Ark. And the reason we're diving in today is a lot of people say the game really opens up at Endgame, and I couldn't agree more. We'll dive into why that is, what you do, how Endgame works, and everything along those lines. And I hope you enjoy the video. I want to have a quick discussion on a couple pointers that I think you should know prior to getting to this point in the game. There are things you're going to want to keep track of in your mind. You want to save your feathers, which are these tools and these devices you get as you play that allow you to instantly revive on the spot if you die. So let's say I'm fighting a boss and I die and I have a death counter of 3. It'll still count that as a death, but I'll be able to revive myself right there on the spot without any outside influence. Obviously, you're going to want to save that to when the content starts getting really intense and timelines and trying to finish a raid in a certain timeline is necessary. Alongside feathers, you're also going to want to save certain battle items. Battle items are potions and equipment that can only be used in things such as raids that normal potions and such can't be used in. For example, you can see here I have these master healing potions. These are standard potions, not battle items. And then if I went down here and I've got these Spirit's Blessing bound intense battle item potions. This gives me 60% of my maximum HP instantly when I use it, whereas this potion, gives me 2,600 HP. So these are the items that you're going to want to save. These purple or higher tier percentage health battle item potions. You're only able to bring a couple of those into these certain contents that allow you to use these potions. Another thing to note is there are other types of battle items such as this signal flare. When I get into a boss hunt, it'll show me where on the map the boss is. Stuff like that you might want to hold on to for when raids require more strict timelines, right? All right, so I keep mentioning raids, raid this, raid that. What are they and how does it work? Well, raids are very similar to Monster Hunter fights. I don't know if you've ever played Monster Hunter, but you send in 4 guys to go fight a big bad boss. There's mobs around the area, but you've got to kill this boss in a certain time frame. You can only use specific battle items like I talked about earlier in these raids. The first 2 tiers of these raids, first off, they're all different bosses, very cool, a lot of fun, awesome endgame content. First 2 tiers of these raids are pretty much a joke. They're really quick. On my blaster, I ripped through these first 4 bosses the other day on one of my blasters in like 20 minutes. But another thing to note is you're gonna have 2 Guardian Souls. This is just allows you to get a lot more rewards at the end of one of these raids per day. So that's when we talk about these daily content, but I'm not gonna dive into too much of that right now. Right now, I just wanna show you kind of how Endgame works. So what's the point of doing these raids? Well, you get upgrade materials in these raids. Obviously, you get better materials as you climb up. Upgrade materials are what Endgame is all about, and I'm going to full screen this to tell you about this. Endgame in this game is all about upgrading equipment. It's not so much about finding rare equipment as it is increasing your gear's equipment level. Very similar to Destiny where you had a light level, you're going to want to upgrade the shite out of this equipment to the point where you extend that level of equipment so you can get to higher tiers of bosses in different Endgame content. Does that make sense? So I'll show you what I mean. For example, I go into these raids and you can see that I only need a gear score of 302. My equipment level only needs to be 302 for me to do it. I, on this account, don't have a gear score of 355 yet, so I'm not able to do this 3rd boss. So I'm going to have to focus on doing these first 2 bosses and doing some of the other endgame content in order to get that upgrade material to get to that equipment level. I hope that makes sense. Obviously, if you have any questions, please put them in the comments below, and I will answer them. The next type of content I want to talk about in Endgame is Chaos Dungeons. These are just large-scale dungeons that you're going to do with, like I said, a team of 4 that you're ultimately going to go into a dungeon and try to clear as fast as possible or just as smoothly as possible to get more upgrade and equipment rewards. This is where you're going to get a lot of the baseline equipment that you're going to try to level up. So let's say I have, equipment with a score of 302 that starts at 302. Obviously, I'm going to level that equipment up as far as I can to grind my gear score up until I reach that next tier. And then I'm going to eventually get equipment that's going to start at gear score 340, for example. And then I'm going to build off that until I get to that next tier. I hope that makes sense to you. But like I said, this is a Chaos Dungeon is essentially just a large-scale dungeon you're going to work through with your friends, try to kill the final boss, and obtain rewards. This is another set of the daily content. You're only going to be able to do this stuff a certain amount of times a day. The 3rd type of endgame content is a cube dungeon raid. Ultimately, it's a cube dungeon. So you're going to go into it. It's very similar to the Chaos Dungeons, except for there's going to be stages. You're going to drop into a stage. You're going to have to clear it. It's going to be a boss or a bunch of mobs or some obscure sort of event that you have to tackle with your team. And from this, you get rewards that, well, first off, a lot of money, but you also obtain this kind of material that lets you upgrade at a better rate of successful upgrading. I know that's kind of confusing. You're going to be upgrading this equipment, and then eventually, as you upgrade to a certain tier, that equipment has a chance of failing as you upgrade. This is going to provide you equipment and money to help you make that more successful. A chance of that being more successful if you actually upgrading to the next tier. This costs tickets. So tickets are found in cubes and some of the other endgame content. You'll see here I have a ticket to cubes here. This is stuff that you'll find in some of the endgame content, but it's a lot of fun. It's interesting. You don't want to fail in this, obviously. You want to succeed. So can be really intense, a lot of good communication. It's just a blast. Alongside cubes, we're going to be experiencing towers. I'm not sure if both towers will be out on release because this is an 800 gear score. I think we're just going to have the Tower of Shadow. The Tower of Shadow, on this account I barely climbed anywhere, is essentially very similar to the cube where I talk about tiers. You are literally solo climbing a tower. It's going to be a boss fight here, a bunch of mobs here, a bunch of suicide mobs diving at you. You just got to dodge the entire time. You know, different tricks, different puzzles. You just have to climb this tower yourself, and as you climb, you obtain rewards. These rewards can be equipment, they can be skill points, they can be ability stones, which is something I'll touch on in a later video. Vitality, growth potions, stuff that is just going to help your character's inherent stats. This is a fun piece of content. I love stuff like this in video games. MapleStory had something very similar with a boss climb. I love this type of content. The next piece of endgame I want to talk about is Trials Pass. Very similar to cubes in that you need to have a ticket, which you can obtain from doing some of the other endgame content. But this is essentially a boss holdout. You are going to be in the center of a bridge, and bosses are going to come from both sides in waves, and you've got to try to get to the end, the final wave, which I believe in the first one is 15, if I'm not mistaken. You're going to battle it out with a group of friends, 1 to 4, and ultimately just try to kill all these bosses and obtain equipment and chest rewards. They give you upgrade materials, similar to a lot of this endgame stuff, just trying to climb you to that next tier. This is a lot of fun. I believe this to be out on release. I'm sure some of these other paths, like, for example, this gear score of 1302, we're not going to be able to sniff that on any game release, or on the release of Lost Ark West, but I'm assuming we'll have this first path. This is a blast. I mean, everyone loves fighting bosses. This is exclusively bosses all the time, and I believe it to be a lot of fun. The next piece are daily and weekly quests. So you've got your daily quests, your weekly quests. This is guild quests on this account. I don't have a guild. It's called instructions on the Russian translator. I'm not sure why. All this stuff lets you accumulate points and then have these tokens that you can ultimately trade for items that you could sell for gold. I haven't really touched on this yet, and I'll probably touch on it in a later video. Gold is everything in Lost Ark because everything can be purchased with gold. If you go to the auction house, you can buy and sell everything for gold, including cosmetics. It's everything in Lost Ark. So your goal with all these dailies, this endgame content that you could do per day and per week, is to try to accumulate as much gold, as much upgrade materials as possible, and then you could choose to either funnel it into an account or one character, or kind of spread it around various different characters. That's why it's so important to have alts, and this is something I've talked about in other videos. Alts just allow you to do this with more accounts, more characters on a daily basis. So the more you're able to do this, the better your character that's your main or wherever you're funneling the stuff into will be. And obviously there's some people that are going to try to just spend a lot of money to try to make their lives a little easier instead of making alts, but you can very much play this game without spending $1. As long as you make a couple characters and just funnel it into one guy, you'll have no problem keeping up. There's guild daily rewards. There's also guild battles with massive PvP battles. And speaking of PvP, another section of endgame that I've talked about in my PvP video is PvP. This is something that you could mainline and exclusively focus on throughout your entire Lost Ark career if you want to do that. Because then you can turn in the PvP tokens that you obtain for upgrade materials, for resources, for items that you could sell for gold. You can mainline, and even equipment and cosmetics, you can mainline PvP and just make that your sole focus if that's something you're into, and ultimately climb through that avenue. So the final thing I forgot to kind of touch on is the adventure book. Another thing you could do in endgame is really go to different areas and complete the areas. For example, you're going to want to fight the world bosses that are in that area, do the main quests, the dungeons, find the collectibles, find the viewpoints, areas that you find with this scroll that ultimately it just shows you the surrounding area, do the story missions. Because when you do that, you're able to attain various items. Like, for example, I just got 20 Feathers of Resurrections from doing some of the story quests and stuff in that area. The more you complete, the more things you're able to obtain, and some of the end game items in this adventure book are super important. So that's just another avenue you could tackle at end game. I didn't want to dive too deep into everything because there's so much to talk about in terms of, you know, what piece of end game gives you what piece of equipment, upgrade materials, all that stuff is stuff I can walk into on future videos. I wanted to keep this relatively short just to maintain attention and just kind of show you what you can expect early on in endgame. As I've stated throughout the video, there is more to come. 16-person raids, abyss dungeons, these massive endgame experiences. We're going to have save points because it's going to take so long. I very much look forward to the future of Lost Ark. The game already is in a great state, and I just want everyone to keep enjoying. So if you have any questions about endgame or things that I can answer or things you want me to address in future videos, please put that in the comments below. I appreciate all you guys being here like crazy. Please go sub to this YouTube here, follow my Instagram, my Twitch, Twitter. I'm trying to be more active on some of those socials. I appreciate all you guys being here like I just said. I love you guys. Thanks.